Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host Gershwan and you are watching OneMindSyndicate. Today we continue talking about chaos as we get into one of the most famous traitor armies that the Imperium has ever faced. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K content every single day. If you have any suggestions, comment down below. This is a viewer request, so we do read all the suggestions that you guys send our way. Just comment down below if you have one. And if you do enjoy our content, thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can create these videos, so thank our patrons. If you guys want to support, link in the description. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Vraksian Traitor Militia. The Vraksian Traitor Militia, also known as the Vraksian Renegade Militia, was a traitor guard military force of the apostate cardinal Xaphan during the brutal siege of Vraks. This traitor army was a formidable force, primarily due to its sheer size. Although no exact figures remain available, it was believed that the population of Vraks Prime, which was almost 8 million people, were all considered traitors and manpower of the apostate cardinal's army. Quality varied greatly in the militia, from well-trained and well-equipped troops who possessed fanatical morale, to undisciplined mobs of half-trained conscripts. The best Vraksian troops were the disciples of Xaphan. The elite cadre of troops were the cardinal's own men, handpicked by his ecclesiarchal representatives for their loyalty to him, and many had prior military experiences. All had sworn oaths of service to the cardinal himself, and in return they had picks of Vraks Prime's plunder. The Imperium had no idea how many disciples Xaphan had, but would form the disciplined core of the traitor militia. After the disciples of Xaphan in quality, there were the original Vraksian Planetary Garrison Auxiliary. Due to its strategic importance, Vraks Prime had been guarded by a large force. These troops were equivalent in quality to the well-trained Planetary Defense Force, the Imperium Standard Reserve Force for the regiments of the Astra Militarum. This militia did not have the training or equipment of regular Imperial Guardsmen, but their access to the Departamental Militarum stores on Vraks rectified any equipment deficiencies and provided vast numbers of heavy vehicles such as Lehman Russ battle tanks, chimeras, and basilisks. The militia's fighting strength had been built around a backbone of veteran Imperial Guardsmen and officers drawn from the disbanded regiments. Though now well equipped, the Imperium believed it unlikely that the garrison force could do more than man a static defense line. The traitor army's next group of troops were drawn from the Vraksian Labor Corps. The Departamental Militarum maintained a labor corps on Vraks Prime that was large and included many Ogrins. The labor corps was made up of indentured workers who did routine labor such as constructing and repairing roads, pouring the ferrocrete for new bunkers, digging out new underground storehouses, and transporting goods and equipment to and from the planet's only starport. Most were oppressed souls with little left to hope for in life other than the endless toil and sweat. As such, many had willingly joined the apostate cardinal's rebellion and saw fighting for him as a way to escape their miserable lives. A general dislike for the departamentals then master prefects on Vraks had also spurred on their support for the rebellion. Many of the laborers had already received some basic military training, as the Labor Corps had also supplied many of the troops for the Vraksian militia. Although only poorly trained, Vraks' militia was truly a massive force. 1 in 4 laborers either volunteered or were conscripted into the militia. The fourth force of manpower for the Vraksian Traitor Militia was the Pilgrims and the Departamentarum's own workforce of administrators and bureaucrats. These were men with no military experience, but once armed, they could hold a defensive position. While many of the Pilgrims on Vraks saw the Cardinal as their messiah, they had no idea of who or even why they were fighting. Many volunteered for the Vraksian Frateris Militia, raised by the Cardinal in the belief that they would be defending the holy shrine of St. Leonis the Blind against heretical forces. They had been told that the enemy were the true heretical renegades and that they must join the militia or see the holy place defiled. These troops were given the lowest priority in weapons and equipment drawn from the Vraksian stores. To back up these traitor forces, Xaphan had his own men, former ecclesiarch agents and preachers who moved through the ranks, tracking the apostate cardinal's heretical religious gospel and reinforcing the militia's loyalty. Individuals from the Planetary Defense Force Garrison Militia, many former Imperial Guard sergeants, had been promoted to become the Vraksian militia's enforcers. These were the men who would enforce discipline and loyalty, much like the Astra Militaren's own commissars. In combat, the enforcers would stray behind the front lines and shoot any man who fled the post. And lastly, in the traitorous ranks were the dangerously insane and psychopathic. These were individuals who had shown signs of developing psychic abilities. Unprotected psykers were always seen as easy prey for warp entities, and there were several hundred such men and women in Vraks Prime's deepest underground dungeons, waiting for transportation to Terra on the next black ship to arrive. The Cardinal believed these rogue psykers were his own children, and claimed that they relayed messages to him from the ruinous powers of chaos. Even with this wide variety of troops, the Vraksian Traitor Militia had a structure similar to that of most Astra Militarum armies. Manning the forward trenches were countless disorganized platoons of militiamen, armed with heavy weaponry at key points in the defensive lines. Supporting them were artillery in the form of basilisk batteries, manticores, medusas, and griffin mortars. And even as the Imperium blockaded the planet, mothballed tanks and endless underground supply depots left the Vraksians in a very good position to fight the impending war. The average Vraksian militiamen were not especially well armed, relying on less popular autoguns in many cases, instead of the standard las gun of active Imperial Guard regiments. In addition to the autogun or auto pistol, many militiamen were armed with crude melee weapons fashioned from sharpening tools from scrap metal. Some labor corpsmen relied on mining picks and rock drills for close-quarter combat, the sort frequently experienced during the trench warfare common during the siege. These same militia generally had to fashion their own armor, crude and cumbersome as it was. Despite the inferior materials and decrease in the efficiency of the force that resulted, this makeshift armor offered protection on par with flank armor, issued to many of the Imperial troops across the sector. More well-equipped militia had access to every weapon an Imperial soldier might have, from plasma weapon, mortars, demolition charges, and flamers, commonly used to storm trenches during a counterattack. The Cardinal's champions and disciples of Xaphan had access to many more exotic items, including plasma pistols, sniper weapons, and power fists. One universal item carried by these renegades was a rebreather, whether unsophisticated or complex. In the harsh, sulfurous atmosphere of Vraks Prime, those without breathing equipment were guaranteed to suffer a lingering death. Supporting the 8 million or so soldiers in the Vraksian militia, row upon row of artillery batteries had been meticulously placed to rain death on any advancing force. A common armored unit used to defend the siege included the Lehman Russ tank, generally deployed to repel infantry assaults against the Vraksian defensive lines. Another preferred choice among many traitor militia commanders was the Malkador assault tank, used to spearhead many assaults into no man's land. Although of more antiquated design, these sizable war machines were more than able of ranking infantry formations, disbanding enemy armor, and laying down a curtain of explosive fire upon the Imperial attackers. The sheer size and strength of the Vraksian Traitor Militia ultimately forced the Imperium to fight a grueling 17-year-long siege of Vraks to dislodge the apostate Cardinal and end his threat to the Emperor's realm. And those were 40 facts on the Vraksian Traitor Militia. If you guys enjoyed this video, thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can create these videos. Link in the description if you guys want to support. It's $1 a month and it goes a long way, so thank you ahead of time. The cool thing about traitor forces, whether they're like traitor Imperial Guardsmen, traitor militia, anything like that, is that most of the time you think, oh, they're kind of chaotic and they're just all over the place, but in reality, no, they're very disciplined, almost as disciplined or exactly as disciplined as like regular Imperial Guardsmen, planetary defense forces, stuff like that. So it's fun to see the breakdown of what these traitor forces actually look like once you drop down the hierarchy and try to understand how they became traitors in the first place. What's interesting is that for the Imperium, Imperial Guardsmen, Planetary Defense Force, they are all driven by fear. Fear that the Commissar is going to kill them, fear that the God Emperor is not going to protect them, whereas Traitor Guardsmen usually are motivated by incentives. Their incentive is the powers of chaos, which is interesting because like in today's day and age, I think the the incentive part of becoming part of a military is a little bigger. Like, they're gonna pay for your school, they're gonna do all these awesome things for you. So it's almost as if like Chaos is the good guys in 40k, and the Imperium is actually just bad and oppressive. But comment down below, let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. This is Gershwan with OneMindSyndicate signing out.